Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, new calls for change to the ride-sharing industry at the San Diego airport. A scientific match made in heaven, how a 3D printer will help develop the next generation of makeup and skincare products.
And elder abuse investigations in care facilities are up in San Diego County. I'm Peggy Pico with new ways to protect seniors. Plus, it's a booming business thanks to medical marijuana's industry. What's behind the growing popularity of hash oil as we take a closer look at the business and culture of dabbing.
I think that this is as important as the East Coast and the arrival of the Mayflower.
Waiting for its champagne bottle, a Spanish ship with San Diego ties, the finishing touches before she's ready to launch. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi. Hello, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Drought-devastated California is still thirsty. The latest survey shows the state fell short of voluntary conservation targets for March. Overall water savings is only 9%, missing the voluntary 20% target set by Governor Jerry Brown today. State regulators consider rules to set new reduction targets by as much as 36% for some communities. A conservative state lawmaker is criticizing the governor's plan to crack down on water wasters, fearing the plan could create permanent water police without due process for accused violators. But the State Water Board says those fined will get a chance to defend themselves. Tomorrow on KPBS Midday, all businesses are not equal when it comes to water use restrictions. The San Diego industries that may be hit the hardest. That's at noon on KPBS Radio. New signs of support for the ride-sharing industry. Since Thursday, 27,000 San Diegans have signed a petition telling local regulators they want Uber at the airport. But KPBS reporter Megan Burke says Uber has been allowed to pick up passengers at Lindbergh Field for a month now. She joins us from the newsroom to help clear things up. Megan, what else can you tell us about this petition?
Well, it went out to Uber users last week in an email encouraging them to sign and start using the hashtag #YesForSan on social media. Uber has been prohibited from operating at airports across the country. San Francisco became the first airport to let them in October.
And why wasn't Uber allowed at the San Diego airport?
Well, the airport caps the number of taxis serving the airport, and it tightly regulates them. And that cap has been maxed out for some time. And then Uber does business differently than taxis. It doesn't use the same background checks, vehicle inspections, or insurance local regulators are used to. After several months of negotiations, the airport offered the transportation network companies a special permit last month. To date, none have applied for that permit.
So is Uber interested in servicing airport passengers here?
Well, Uber lobbyist Robert Callahan says the company is holding out for better arrangements.
We're close, but we're not there yet. The proposal, as drafted, does contain some outdated and redundant regulations that aren't really keeping up with the technology and sort of create a confusing and probably burdensome experience for ride-sharing passengers and the drivers of the ride-sharing company. So we're appreciative and hopeful that the process moves forward in a way that really makes ride-sharing totally realized at the airport.
Under that agreement, Uber would not be able to provide curbside service. Customers would have to walk to the terminal parking lot, and drivers would have to fill out parking slips by hand.
Yeah, seems inefficient. Will the airport budge on this?
It's unclear. A spokeswoman for the airport said today the policy guards for safety and order, and she also said the airport has to consider providing equitable opportunities for all transportation providers. The taxi industry has been vocal in its opposition to Uber at the airport, saying Uber competes unfairly. Again, it doesn't have the same regulations as taxis, and as we're seeing here, it has quite a bit of financial and social media muscle.
KPBS reporter Megan Burks. Some call it a slap on the wrist. There are new questions tonight about the punishments for the federal agents who detained a UC San Diego college student and left him in a holding cell for 5 days without food and water. The Drug Enforcement Administration paid Daniel Chong a settlement worth more than $4 million. Agents picked him up as part of a drug raid in 2012. They found he wasn't involved in any drug activity, but they forgot to release him from his holding cell. Now we're learning the agents involved received either reprimands or suspensions of up to 7 days. The punishments drew criticism from the Justice Department and others for being too light. The department says the penalties highlighted a need for a broad review of DEA disciplinary practices. The county health agency says 1 out of 4 adults and 1 in 6 children suffer from mental illness. Now, a new study shows many patients face discrimination because of fear and mistrust of their illness. It's a common stigma more people are fighting to change, like Serena Goldsmith, who lives in Oceanside.
I was actually diagnosed with bipolar disorder, type 1, 23 years ago.
She's seen a lot of progress since then, but says there's still a lot that needs to be done. For 3.5 years, she's been working to help others recover as a peer counselor at the nonprofit Mental Health Systems office in the North County.
So it was actually the first time when I applied for a job that was an asset, that my mental health diagnosis was something to be proud of and something to see as a strength.
New research from the RAND Corporation shows most people with a mental illness still face discrimination in California, so it makes sense the vast majority would hide their problem from coworkers, classmates, even family.
And you feel frustrated, angry, sad.
Dr. Anthony Jensen says the Green Rose campaign is designed to encourage people who have sought treatment just like any other illness, and remind others just how common depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia can be.
And so there are many people around us who we work with or are in our family who may be suffering or have a period in their life where they suffer from a mental illness, and we need to be open to supporting them and reach out to them.
Mental Health Systems has been working with the county since 1978. It provides mental health services and abuse recovery programs. For a list of other resources, just dial 211. The number of elder abuse cases is on the rise in San Diego County. Last night, we told you about the DA's new website and hotline to report abuse. Now, Peggy Pico takes an in-depth look at what's actually being done to stop it.
More than half of the population in San Diego County are over the age of 65, and the number of seniors living here is projected to increase by 130% in the next 15 years. As the aging population continues to expand, so does concern over elder abuse. Joining me with a closer look at how to protect seniors is my guest, Deputy District Attorney Paul Greenwood with the Long-Term Care Special Prosecutions Unit. And Paul, this elder abuse investigative unit opened last year. How many cases involving assisted living facilities are under investigation now, and what types of complaints are you getting?
Well, we opened 113 complaints so far. Primarily they came through Community Care License, which is the state agency which oversees these kinds of facilities in San Diego. And a large number of them, surprisingly to me, involved complaints of resident upon resident, where one resident is complaining that another resident maybe physically assaulted them or verbally abused them or emotionally upset them in some way. Of all those cases that we opened, we've issued 5 felony cases already, some of which have been completed, and another 50 or so were closed out, lacking criminal prosecution, and still many others under review right now.
We're talking about elder abuse or neglect in facilities, but the warning signs are about the same. They include, physical signs like bruising or broken bones. There can be pain for no reason, supposedly, but then there can also be behavioral changes, financial abuse, and isolation. When it comes to isolation and behavioral changes in a facility, what should you be watching out for?
Well, if you're a loved one and you're visiting a resident, a relative, and you see, in fact, for example, in some of the cases I've seen where the relative picked up on body language changes for the resident. When particularly a male employee entered the room, suddenly the whole demeanor of the resident changed. There was some fear, some concerns, even panic. That would be a huge red flag. If the resident says, I'm missing some jewelry, or I don't know where my check checkbook is, that should be an immediate red flag. And if the resident undergoes a certain personality change, maybe they seem to be a little more withdrawn, lack of communication, not willing to talk about things in the facility, that can be a very definite red flag.
So keep an eye out for both physical and behavioral. Now, there's more than 600 licensed assisted care facilities in San Diego County. So what kind of inspections or monitoring goes on of these facilities right now?
Well, that was one of the things that the local media really brought out and highlighted, that up until now, the state is only required to go into a facility once every 5 years. And as a result, of course, many facilities were operating substandard with very many violations of the regulations and the codes. So that's going to be changed this year to once a year. But even so, just once a year visit is primarily not enough. And that's why we have to rely upon the public to report to us if they see any substandard conditions going on in these facilities.
Yeah, and let's talk about that reporting. As of yesterday, the county now has a new reporting website and phone line to report elder abuse in care facilities. The number's on your screen at 619-531-3342. That's 619-531-3342, or they can go onto your website. Are any of these calls recorded, and are they confidential?
Well, if you are not a mandated reporter, you can remain anonymous as a member of the public. But what we will do is every business day we will check that line, and we will then decide if the complaint warrants further investigation. And if so, I will direct one of our investigators to literally go out to the facility unannounced. We will not indicate to the facility who has sent us or who has made the report, because obviously there's concern for retaliation. But we will dig deeper, and if it warrants it, we will then look to see if there is a potential crime that's been committed.
What kind of punishment does an abuser face if they're convicted of elder abuse?
Well, elder abuse or neglect can be a felony, and if so, it can take up to 4 years state prison. But if there is also great bodily injury, then depending on the age of the resident, if they're over 70, it could be an additional 5 years. So you could get up to about 9 years state prison for a serious case of elder neglect or abuse.
And what should people be looking for when they're looking to place a family member into a long-term care facility? Are there a few things you should look for?
You should, and I would say that you shouldn't just go for one visit where the facility knows that you're thinking about, because they'll put on a good show. Go unannounced on another day. Go at night. See what level of staffing there is. Talk to community care licensing to see if there have been any prior incidents of citations or fines against the facility, because eventually we hope that San Diego County will embrace this grading system that we hope to introduce later this year with 18 facilities, and then the consumers will have a greater confidence that they are actually placing a loved one in a good facility.
All right, there's so much more to talk about, and we have links and the reporting number and links to your website on our website, kpbs.org. Deputy District Attorney Paul Greenwood, thank you.
My pleasure, Peggy.
It's that time of year again. County budget talks are expected to start at the end of the month. The proposed budget includes an overall 6% spending increase in departments such as public safety, health and human services, land use, and community services. Some challenges include the $2 billion pension debt, drought-related water restrictions, and stormwater runoff mandates. Get ready for your close-up. A San Diego 3D printing company announced a deal today with one of the world's leading cosmetic companies. KPBS science reporter David Wagner explains how they may create a new line of skincare products free from animal testing.
San Diego-based Organovo is developing 3D printed human skin in hopes of helping cosmetics giant L'Oreal improve their product testing. So the idea here would be to, for example, test an anti-wrinkle cream on the bioprinted cells and see if they actually do get smoother. Beauty companies have been moving away from testing products on animals, and current skin substitutes have their limitations. Organovo can assemble real human cells into a three-dimensional tissue, and CEO Keith Murphy says their 3D printed skin could better mimic the complexity of actual human skin.
The opportunity with 3D bioprinting is to create something that can closely represent, for example, a full thickness of skin, as opposed to just the top layer.
This partnership with L'Oreal is Organovo's first foray into cosmetics. They've also been working on 3D printed liver and kidney cells for drug testing. David Wagner, KPBS News.
As the effort to legalize marijuana for recreational use continues in California, there are spin-off industries gaining new fans, like hash oil. Peggy Pico has more on the business and culture of so-called dabbers.
Hash oil is a type of marijuana concentrate. Under California's medical marijuana laws, it's legal to use but illegal to make. My guest, San Diego author and award-winning journalist Mike Sager, immersed himself in the hash oil, or so-called dab culture, and emerged with a revealing article published in California Sunday magazine. And Mike, what is hash oil and how is it made?
Hash oil is really just the most modern form of an ancient drug called hashish. It comes from marijuana plants. In the ancient times, people would pat it and sift it and create blocks of hash. Today, they use butane and medical grade equipment.
And they sort of liquefy it and turn it into all different options. How is it consumed? Is it more potent than, say, smoking a joint?
The effects are different. If you smoke hash oil, you'll get a higher high, but it doesn't last as long. But hash oil is also used in cookies, candies, salves, balms. All the various uses that marijuana can be put to today are all through this sort of liquefaction process.
Yeah, we're seeing some pictures of how it's liquefied, and it comes in different ways. It can be crunchy or it can be liquid, and as you said, put in many different ways. But you followed a group of guys who make and distribute marijuana concentrate. They call themselves Wooks, and they attend secret hash oil conventions of sorts. What stood out to you most about traveling with these group of guys?
Well, the thing is that hash oil is a solitary art. Almost to a man, all of these guys who are in their 20s and 30s, and they tend to like tattoos and beards, and but of course there's exceptions to every rule. But they all at one point, what they share is they smoked some hash oil and they liked it, and then they didn't know where to get it. So they started combing the web to figure out how. So every single one of these Wooks is sort of a great American success story in a way, because they've all taught themselves how to make this product.
So if hash oil is being made by individuals and it's illegal to manufacture in California, how are these products that have it ending up in medical dispensaries here?
Well, that's a great question. When I called the attorney for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, his quote was something to the effect of, well, if it falls from the sky, then it's legal to sell. So it's one of these legal fictions that's very much similar to the way the marijuana laws in California started, where you could sell it, but you couldn't grow it.
Okay, so why do you think marijuana concentrate is becoming so popular? Because it seems like it is.
First of all, it's a new product and people are exploiting the market. That's number one. Number two, what hash oil provides is a extended medical usage for more of the population. Right now, medical marijuana, if you get a doctor's excuse, what you do is, oh, go smoke a few hits, eat a piece of brownie. What these larger labs provide for patients is pills, for instance, where you could take 2 pills every 4 hours, just like aspirin, and this will help your pain problem.
So kind of a consistent dosage
right,
there.
and also big companies can grow their own. So, and in the states where it's legal, there's sort of a field to store process where there's a barcode and testing of the product all the way through.
Now, I know San Diego has had a few explosions linked to these home butane using, hash oil manufacturing practices. And last year, a local prosecutor said hash oil is, quote, the new meth lab. Do you think it is? Is it a public risk?
Well, I think it makes for a great headline. I think that the most important thing is the chemicals used are not as volatile in butane, but I think it's more like the drug we're discussing here. People using meth and making meth are sort of psychotic. That's the effects of meth. Hash and marijuana, people are high, but the biggest OD I've ever seen on marijuana is someone falling asleep. It's not the same sort of drug. So, but the bottom line here is that there's people making illegal stuff that's being sold legally, that we're just one law away from giving them legal labs and taxing them. So, then it eliminates this problem.
All right, so much to discuss about this, so much more in your article. Mike Sager, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next News Hour. How end-of-life care like hospice varies widely by race in America. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
Setting sail with history, KPBS video journalist Katie Shulov has followed the 4-year reconstruction of the San Salvador in San Diego. Now, despite delays, she says this tangible tie to the past is nearly ready to launch.
Down one of San Diego's most iconic trails, at the tip of Point Loma, there's a tall stone statue looking out over the Pacific. Every year, about 1 million people from all over the world pay him a visit, whether they know who he is or not.
No.
No?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it says it right there. I think it says it right there.
Don't know. It's just really pretty.
The first man who was here in San Diego.
From Spain? I'm guessing he sailed. That's the only way I figured he got here.
Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, he's a man of mystery. No one really knows much about him.
In September 1542, explorer Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo looked across these same waters from the deck of his 200-ton Spanish galleon, the San Salvador. He claimed the land below where his statue now stands for Spain, becoming the first European to set foot on the west coast.
Eu, João Rodrigues Cabrillo, proclamo todo este território rei do caso de Espanha.
Fast forward nearly 500 years, and the San Diego Maritime Museum is relaunching his ship. Well, a reconstruction of it.
It's going to be the new ambassador to San Diego, and everybody's going to know who Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo is now.
Construction started almost exactly 4 years ago.
At one point, we thought it would take us 2 years to build, but it's been a long time since we believed that.
Maritime Museum President and CEO Ray Ashley says it's finally almost done. He estimates it's 96% complete.
The longer we take to build it, the more people have been able to see it. And, building it as we have like this, where the public can see it, I mean, it's like this theatrical performance, really, that's been unfolding over the last 4 years.
I just kind of walked around the boat and I looked up and went, geez, I actually built that. I've never built anything like this in my life.
Shipwright Don Davis drives 130 miles each day from Fallbrook to work on the big wooden vessel. They've used almost all wood and other materials that would have been available in the 16th century. It'll be 92 feet long and weigh about 230 tons when it's finished.
I don't even look at this as a replica. We built this thing the same way that the Spaniards would have built it back in 1542. We used some better tools.
400 volunteers have given some 90,000 hours toward the construction. Sherry Lorch is one of them.
All of us are living out a dream, adventure. We're all, I think, seekers.
A workforce that's 2/3 volunteers has made for slow progress because the daily number of workers is unpredictable.
We'll do these and we'll go all the way aft in the middle. How's that?
But all that free labor has its benefits, too. The project is on budget at $6.2 million. Ashley says that if they'd paid for all the skilled volunteers and donated materials, the actual cost of the San Salvador would have been $11 million. Much of the actual $6.2 million cost has come from private donors and special fundraisers, like this period costume gala that raised $191,000.
For us to be here and sharing this with all of our friends and seeing our beautiful ship is just makes my little heart go pity-pat.
Even the honorary consul of Spain was there.
Oh, it looks wonderful. I'm so glad that I'm here. So it is great. I think that this is as important as the East Coast and the arrival of the Mayflower.
Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo on the San Salvador sailed into San Diego Bay 78 years before any pilgrim set eyes on Cape Cod and 65 years before Jamestown.
Once it's seaworthy, the San Salvador will teach kids that history during educational sailing voyages up the California coast. Pending Coast Guard approval, they hope to take 49 passengers. And it's got enough bunks to take a full classroom of kids on overnight trips. Ashley says 1.2 million visitors came to watch the ship being built at Spanish Landing Park. Now, you'll need to wait until it's in the water to get up close again. But Ashley says launching the ship has been a bit harder than they thought.
If we had built the San Salvador in a shipyard that had slipways and cranes and travel lifts, our efforts to launch the ship would be fairly simple. But as you see here, we have built her in a parking lot, in a park, and therefore taking probably one of the most complex and heavy objects, moving objects that anyone could have built 500 years ago, and moving it over the road to a launch point and making a public event out of it, that proved pretty difficult.
Once it's in the water, down near the other Maritime Museum ships, the public can watch as they add 2 miles of rigging, raise the masts, and after all is complete, the big public ceremony will happen for the christening.
Where the black ends, and then that nice rosewood colored stuff. So it'll be just right below that curvy angular part. That's what gets whacked.
We'll keep you posted. Katie Shulov, KPBS News.
The Maritime Museum hopes the ship will launch sometime in the next 3 weeks. You can explore the San Salvador now online at kpbs.org. We're looking at a chance for some rain in San Diego. You may see some showers by the coast on Thursday night with 60s the next few days. Cloudy in the Inland Valley sections with 60s. Rain may be in the forecast for the mountain areas, temperatures in the 50s and 40s. And there's a wind advisory up for the desert until tomorrow, temperatures 80s and 70s. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.